The time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The Business News headlines is brought to you by CBX Wealth Management, making more possible.
Climate finance reform, regional aid surge, and a big tech AI power play. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Tuesday, November 18, 2025. I'm Rachelle Moncrief. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast, locally, Jamaica pushes a World Bank-style model to overhaul global climate finance as leaders gather at the COP30 summit. On the regional front, Barbados and Guyana deliver major economic support to help shore up Jamaica's US $8 billion hurricane recovery effort. And over on the global stage, Microsoft and NVIDIA forge a multi-billion-dollar alliance to power Anthropic's next wave of AI expansion. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the CBX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why CBX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with a major call for an overhaul of climate finance by Jamaica at the COP30 summit. Jamaica has detonated one of the most forceful interventions at COP30, using the global stage in Brazil to demand a radical rewrite of how the world finances climate recovery. In a sharply delivered address, Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation Matthew Samuda told negotiators that the new loss and damage fund must not become another slow-moving, donor-driven pot of money. Instead, he pushed for the fund to be permanently housed inside a World Bank-managed facility, leveraging the same fast-acting systems that power catastrophe bonds and parametric insurance.
The establishment of this fund has justified our call for it to be managed through a World Bank facility, and therefore urge that this could serve as a guiding example as we contemplate the structured approach for other funds in the financial mechanism. Excellencies, the other storm is already forming. Our only defense is ambition, financing, and collective will. We call on the global community, especially major emitters, to honor their commitments and safeguard the 1.5-degree threshold.
Minister Samuda urged developed nations to contribute meaningfully to the fund, insisting that real recovery depends on rapid contributions.
Mr. President, We welcome the fund for responding to loss and damage, and for us, access is not charity, but indeed climate justice. We urge all developed countries to contribute to the fund meaningfully so that frontline countries can recover and rebuild stronger.
That was Jamaica's Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Matthew Samuda. We move now to Jamaica's banking sector, which is confronting one of its most defining stress tests post-Hurricane Melissa. When the Category 5 storm made landfall last month, it did more than wreck infrastructure and isolate parishes during its passage. It also exposed a national weak point that no modern economy can afford to overlook. After the hurricane ripped through the island, large sections of the ABM network went dark, leaving equipment intact but unreachable and offline. Chief Executive Officer of National Commercial Bank Jamaica, Bruce Bowen, says while the bank's cash depots remained secure and its core platforms stayed online through multiple sub-sea cable routes, the final connection between ABMs and the wider network was the single point that failed.
Communication has been communication and road access into some of the off-site ABMs, the ones that aren't at branches, have been our challenge, and communication the biggest single one. More redundancy, yes, will help that. We're looking at that, but again, even if it's in a non-branch location, we have to be able to get to it with cash. But we are seriously looking at how we can build more redundancy into the communication infrastructure to ABMs.
He says ABMs in Black River St. Elizabeth highlighted the wider problem.
In Black River, we have 3 ABMs that came through fine. The problem is there's no connectivity, and the ability to get cash to them is limited. And that was, again, a spectacular job by our teams to make sure that I don't believe anyone else's machines survived through it. But then the fact that we have our systems operating on a cloud basis, we aren't subject to, if a data center or a backup data center were impacted. We have connectivity into the island by multiple routes of subsea cable to make sure there's redundancy there. And with that in place, it's just being able to make that last mile connection to the ABM to make sure that we can ensure it's on, that we can secure it, that because there's the cameras and all the security around it is there.
That was CEO of NCBJ, Bruce Bowen. Meanwhile, Wigton Energy Limited is walking out of Hurricane Melissa with more than just intact turbines. It's coming out with a bigger playbook and a bolder bet on solar. The company says the Category 5 storm effectively stress-tested its turbines and strategy, which sustained only limited damage. CEO Gary Barrow told investors on Monday that the plants actually performed better in Melissa than in Hurricane Beryl.
We fared pretty well from our visible damage as well as inspections that we have done to date. We are seeing just really limited damage associated with phase 1, that is Wigton 1. Phase 2, Wigton 2, and phase 3, Wigton 3, we are seeing very little to no damage. So we fared very well. The plants held up pretty well. In fact, they did better under Melissa than they did with Beryl. And part of that had to do with some reinforcements that we did based on our lessons from Beryl.
The biggest story, however, is the pipeline. Wigton is also moving ahead with a 70-megawatt utility-scale solar project.
We are moving into solar. You're aware of the 50 megawatt award that we got in terms of utility scale solar, as well as the repowering of phase one, which is about 20.7 megawatts. So in another 2 years, we'll have about 70 megawatts of solar. We saw certainly in our instance where we have done significant solar investments where the solar stood up pretty well. And in fact, we have implemented solar that can withstand Category 5 hurricanes. So just a diversification of the type of renewables that we offer, I think, is important.
That was CEO of Wigton Energy Limited, Gary Barrow. In other news, Jamaica's inflation picture held steady in October, but analysts warn the numbers tell a story frozen before Hurricane Melissa tore through the island. Fresh data from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin shows that the All Jamaica Consumer Price Index rose 0.7% for October, with the agency confirming that all price collection was completed before the storm's passage. The biggest driver was food and non-alcoholic beverages, up 1.5%, pushed higher by rising prices for staples such as sweet potato, tomato, carrot, and cabbage. Electricity costs also nudged the index upward, contributing to a 0.8% increase in housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels. Transport provided the lone tempering effect, falling 0.3% on lower petrol prices. On an annual basis, point-to-point inflation hit 2.9%, driven by steady increases in food, housing, utilities, and restaurant services. Economists note that October's report may represent the last normal inflation print for several months, with Melissa's widespread agricultural and infrastructure damage expected to pressure food, fuel, and service prices heading into the December quarter. We go now to updates from the Bank of Jamaica on how the currency markets traded today. In Tuesday's currency trading session, the US dollar is selling for $161.96, the Canadian for $115.42, the pound for $212.18, while the going rate for the euro is $190.38. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Tuesday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 110 stocks, of which 38 advanced, 49 declined, and 23 traded firm. The winners today include Image Plus Consultants, MPC Caribbean Clean Energy, Cargo Handlers, and Cygnus Real Estate Financial JMD, while leading the losers are Cygnus Real Estate Finance USD, 138 Student Living Jamaica, Caribbean Cement Company, and Express Catering. The main index declined by 2,187.01 points, or 0.70%, to close at 310,285.98 points. The junior market index declined by 5.83 points, or 0.17%, to close at 3,366.07 points.
And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard.
In today's Market Education Feature, we're discussing debt relief. Debt relief refers to restructuring a borrower's obligations to make repayment more manageable while still allowing creditors to recover some of what they are owed. This support can take different forms, including reducing the total amount due, lowering interest rates, or extending the repayment timeline. For individuals, debt relief may be worth considering if, even after cutting expenses, you still can't reasonably repay unsecured debt like credit cards or medical bills within the next few years, or if those debts add up to at least half of your gross income.
The Market Education Feature was brought to you by CariCris, regional ratings, global standards.
And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is coming up next.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses. And Pulse Investments.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. Barbados and Guyana are driving a powerful regional response to Jamaica's Hurricane Melissa crisis, delivering medical assets, engineering support, and critical equipment as the full scale of destruction becomes clearer. Barbados is deploying a fully equipped field hospital arriving Thursday, along with garbage trucks to speed up cleanup operations. Guyana has sent GDF engineers to begin 200 urgent roof repairs in Westmoreland, backed by food, water, generators, chainsaws, storage tanks, and manpower. Guyana's President Irfan Ali, after touring hardest hit areas, called the devastation indescribable and vowed to finish the first 200 roofs before Christmas. The commitments were announced during a high-level CARICOM tour of devastated communities from Montego Bay to White House on Monday, supported by SEDEMA and the regional security system. Jamaica revealed sobering new figures, nearly 1 million people affected and over 150,000 homes damaged or destroyed. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness described losses as an estimated US $8 billion and unprecedented, stressing that recovery must move fast. Antigua and Barbuda and Grenada also pledged financial aid, soldiers, and full regional support towards Jamaica's recovery efforts. Barbados is reporting a mid-year fiscal outperformance fueled by strong corporate tax inflows that pushed revenue well past target and improved the country's fiscal outlook. Presenting the mid-year review to Parliament today, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Ryan Strawn, says total revenue for the period reached $2.16 billion, blowing past the $1.79 billion target.
Total revenue for April to September 2025 amounted to $2,163.09 million, compared with a target of $1,790.02 million. The composition is broad-based, with notable strength in income and profits, and a positive result in goods and services. Income and profits collection total $933.74 million against a target of $517.6 million. Within that, net corporation tax reached $639.45 million, compared with the target of $229.1 million.
That was Barbados's Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Ryan Strawn. In other news, Former T&T Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is warning that two of Trinidad and Tobago's most important state-linked businesses, Perea Fuel Trading and First Citizens Bank (FCB), are facing new and serious risks. In a forcefully delivered briefing on Monday, Rowley says the government's plan to reopen the Point-a-Pierre refinery is raising more questions than answers. He argues the refinery still has no confirmed crude supply, yet the administration is pushing ahead with talks.
I see the government talking about reopening the refinery. We will be very happy if the refinery is reopened because we all want it to be reopened in operation. But as they speak about reopening the refinery, the conversation is very hush-hush. Nobody has said to us that they found somebody with a supply of crude. If we do not see in the statements coming to us from the government a credible supply of oil to make the refinery opening viable commercially, what you will be seeing is the government of the UNC attempting to attach Perea to the refinery as a project for reopening, where whoever gets that refinery or that arrangement, they get Perea.
The former Prime Minister also flagged growing concerns about the country's banking sector.
The UNC came into office and they sold the first set of shares at FCB, at IPO. Total scandal, total fiasco, resulting in a member of parliament having to resign from the parliament in the Senate. Shareholding that was blocked for the workers end up in the pocket of one individual. And the chairman was forced out in a public meeting, AGM of FCB. That is the UNC's record on FCB. Today, you're hearing from the government that FCB is to be the funder of this fancy. The shares of FCB has fallen from $42 to $31.
That was former T&T Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. And it's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 18 securities, of which 7 advanced, 7 declined, and 4 traded firm. Today's winners are Unilever Caribbean, Calypso Macro Index Fund, Angostura Holdings, and First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, while leading the losers are One Caribbean Media, Trinidad and Tobago NGL, Prestige Holdings, and Ansa McCall. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All-TNT Index advanced by 6.42 points to close at 1,346.62. The Composite Index advanced by 2.89 points to close at 936.09. The Cross-Listed Index declined by 0.13 points to close at 69.53. The SME Index remained at 96.30. And we take a short break. But please do stay with us. The international news segment is up. In international news, Microsoft and NVIDIA have unveiled an investment pact worth up to $15 billion as they deepen their cooperation with Anthropic, one of the world's fastest growing AI companies. NVIDIA will commit up to $10 billion, Microsoft up to $5 billion, and Anthropic itself is locking in a massive $30 billion cloud commitment to Microsoft Azure. The agreement ties together the world's largest AI chip supplier, the biggest enterprise cloud operator, and a fast-rising rival to OpenAI. It also diversifies Microsoft's AI bets at a moment when OpenAI is restructuring and deepening its links with Amazon. Anthropic, recently valued at $183 billion, will also deploy 1 gigawatt of NVIDIA compute, a commitment that could cost as much as $25 billion as it scales its Claude model family across global enterprise customers. And while AI giants are consolidating power, European regulators are tightening their grip on the very tech infrastructure that financial markets depend on. The European Union has designated 19 technology providers, including Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft, IBM, Bloomberg, and the London Stock Exchange Group, as critical third-party firms serving the financial sector. The move activates the EU's Digital Operational Resilience Act, or DORA, giving top regulators the authority to directly supervise and stress test the cloud services that power Europe's banks, insurers, and trading platforms. Regulators say the sector's heavy dependence on a handful of global cloud operators poses systemic risk. A single outage at a major provider could trigger market-wide disruption. Companies must now prove they have robust cybersecurity, governance, and failover capabilities to maintain financial stability. The move mirrors similar steps underway in the UK and marks one of the world's strongest attempts to regulate big tech's role in financial infrastructure. And from regulatory power plays, we move to a Hollywood power struggle. Paramount Skydance has slammed as categorically inaccurate a Variety report claiming it was assembling a $71 billion bid backed by sovereign wealth funds from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. The report alleged the Ellison family would anchor the bid through Silicon Valley networks, with Gulf funds contributing $21 billion and Paramount Skydance covering the remaining $50 billion. Despite the denial, Warner Brothers Discovery shares jumped 5.5%, while Paramount gained nearly 2%. Warner Brothers Discovery, weighed down by steep declines in its television business, is actively exploring options ranging from a breakup to a full company sale. Neither WBD nor the Gulf funds have commented, leaving questions in the air. But for now, Paramount is emphatic that no such deal exists. And finally, a major change in global economic leadership is taking place, with political repercussions far beyond Europe. Ireland has lost one of its most seasoned economic leaders. Pascal Donohoe, Ireland's longtime finance chief and the influential president of the Eurogroup of Eurozone finance ministers, has resigned to take up a senior executive role at the World Bank. From November 24, Donohoe will serve as managing director and chief knowledge officer, overseeing how the bank scales development solutions and strengthens global partnerships. From November 24, Donohoe will serve as managing director and chief knowledge officer, overseeing how the bank scales development solutions and strengthens global partnerships. His departure leaves a void in Ireland's coalition government, prompting Prime Minister Simon Harris to shift himself into the finance portfolio to maintain continuity through 2027. World Bank President Ajay Banga says Donahoe's decades of experience in fiscal management, private capital mobilization, and crisis leadership will be invaluable as the institution refocuses on growth, job creation, and economic resilience. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of And now to recap our top stories in the local news. Jamaica pushes World Bank model to overhaul climate finance. Regionally, Barbados and Guyana step up with major support for Jamaica's US $8 billion recovery drive. And internationally, Microsoft and NVIDIA forge multi-billion-dollar alliance to power Anthropic's expansion. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rachel Moncrief. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.